Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Good morning, Glenn.
What's up, brother? Hey, who decided to do these podcasts at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning?
The funny thing is when I came in, I was dogging. Now, I do have a tall boy, right? But I was dogging.
Only one. I'm surprised you only have one today.
I know. But the topics get my adrenaline going.
Nah, you know, it's always, and we always joke about this, man. It's always, in the moment, you never want to do it. Right. But afterwards, it's always worth it.
Right.
You know. But, no, I forgot why I brought that up, but it kind of.
Oh, hey, a couple housekeeping things I want to address.
Love housekeeping.
Yeah. So, first of all, we get poked a lot from social media, our email, or the form on www.sober.coffee of people saying, hey, I'd love to join you at the coffee shop. We love that.
I know, totally.
So, reach out and you got a story to tell. Everyone's got a story to tell, right?
And we say yes to 99% of the people.
I had a call yesterday. They're going to be on in the coming months. Just absolute rock stars. They couldn't join us for coffee this morning, but absolute rock stars that are doing something really, really, really interesting in the sober space. And again, that just came from people that came up on our podcast. Everyone's got a story to tell, and usually there's value in that story. Usually, not mine, but usually other people.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, I think there's only one guy I said no to, and he was an absolute jag-off, and he just wanted to come on and tell us why we're wrong about the 12 steps, and I'm like, I don't feel like putting energy into that one.
Right.
It's like pushing spaghetti, but I just
is that a Philadelphia term?
No, I don't know. It was just terrible, but man, we have met some of the really coolest people out there on social media.
Yeah.
So, hey, reach out, right? I forget our...
do our handles real fast if I can point you to it.
I don't even know them. Sober.Coffee Podcast. Just search Sober.Coffee Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and you'll find us.
Yeah. And YouTube.
Somewhere.
We're on YouTube, too.
Oh, my gosh,
yeah.
YouTube.
We get a lot of good comments from our YouTubers.
Kind of our challenge, right, is the anonymity part, and we've said this before.
Sure.
But when
you can't post a review.
Yeah, when you make comments and post reviews, it gives you your name,
right,
unless you're user 1234, right. Mm-hmm. But most people have their name associated with their online presence, and so a lot of like, hey man, I would have commented. In fact, I had one guy open a separate Gmail just so he could say hi.
Oh, nice.
But it's amazing, what's out there, and. No, man, it's...
reach out to us.
Good stuff, yeah.
I was going to say our dance card is empty, but who knows what a dance card is besides me? And I only learned that from my grandparents, right?
Well, it's funny because there's times when we look at the lineup for our session, and you're like, man, we don't have anybody for these two slots. And I rejoice because I like to sit and
just chat
plowing through stuff, man,
right?
Just exploring stuff. And, so it's all great, man. All great stuff.
What are we going to explore this morning?
Well, I think what we talked about, and man, I'm telling you, first of all, I apologize. My head's all over the place today. But
today is different than yesterday?
No, I guess it's the same.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'm just
be honest here.
I'm just wrestling a little bit less today. But no, I think there's, when you work with newcomers, right? People that are raw in the room, right? And you look at your toolkit. Mm-hmm. Right, and kind of some really important themes, surrounding success in early sobriety or any level of sobriety, right? And so I look at what works there, and I watch you, and I know what I wanted to say.
Uh-oh.
I know what I wanted to kick off with.
Okay.
I've got to say this, right?
Yeah, talk to me.
So I work hard during the week, right? And there's this guy at work every Friday night, like he we always launch a couple YouTube songs, right? Usually old school YouTube songs.
Okay.
It just he and I, we don't talk all week long
Because
right?
you're cranking.
Because I'm cranking. We don't. But just Friday night, that's like our intimate moment.
So he comes into the office. You go out to the
No,
bullpen.
he's in Michigan. He's in
Okay,
Michigan.
okay.
But we shared like
funny.
last night. He shared two. I shared two. Just kind of a way to. It's a unique way to connect
yeah.
with people, right? I mean, I connect with all kinds of people, right? But he said something last night. He goes, "Hey, this is like one of my top 10, right?" So I started thinking this morning, and I'm like, I have. 10 years ago when I did that exercise, I had 0 people in my network. I had 0. In fact, it took a lot of balls to put my own name on that board.
Yes.
Right. And now I've got hundreds and hundreds.
Right.
I am so blessed by my network and the stuff that we can accomplish through a network and, working with and for and alongside other people and get stuff done. Right, just amazing, right? But I was thinking last night that you are without it. My life is so blessed, and you are without a doubt in my top 10, if not my top 5. And that says a lot because my top 5 songs are some really cool freaking songs, right? So as I look at the people in my network, they're not schluppers. Right. They're really quality people.
Well, I think the thing is,
and you're one of them. I just wanted you to know that.
And likewise, I mean that absolutely likewise. I think that the deal with us is that there's no bullshit, right? I mean, there's not bullshit. We talk about work a little bit. We talk about family things. We talk about basketball, but basically, our relationship is based on a structure and a foundation of how we're really doing. Right, a real care, real compassion for how the other guy's doing.
It's amazing when you hurt.
Yes,
I hurt.
Right,
and what's amazing, and this is going to sound really fruity, but it's weird. But there are times when I am going through an absolute shitstorm, and I get a text from you, and say, just one of your one-liners, man. Hey, cheering for you, thinking about you, praying for you, and there are I just got chills. There are so many times I'm like, dude, are you like on my shoulder? Like, can you see me in the middle of fucking battle right now? It just amazes me how that happens. And just, I don't know, man, it's just really cool. And I think we're in the same pool trying to, communicate with others, help others, serve others, and be there for others. And
taking care of our health. I mean, when you ask me how am I doing, and this is our topic today. Our topic is
amazingly,
are we the sum of who we spend time with, right?
Which,
and time on.
Can I just jump on and share this? This is not part of this. I had a really epiphany this week. And I got to go through all right, here we go. So social media, they threw all these phrases out, all that stupid stuff, right? And yet something caught my eye today, and we could do an episode on this alone, right? But I called one of my sponsees, and we spent about a half hour talking about it. I was waiting to go into a big business lunch, and I got there a little bit early, just like I always do. And so I called him. We talked for 30 minutes on this before I jumped into lunch. And here's what the phrase says, and then I want to interpret it, right? It says, the moment your name becomes a solution, you've won.
Read again.
The moment your name, Mikey R., becomes a solution for somebody or something, you've won. Wow. And so I called my sponsee, and we were just kind of brainstorming it, right? And I expounded on it, and because a lot of people, and I'm working on a project, we're trying to quantify recovery, right? What does recovery look like? Can you measure recovery? Can you measure your progress, right? Because I think it's very subjective, but we're starting to put some objective components into it, right? So I said to him, maybe if you relate that phrase to sobriety, right? When your name stops being a liability and changes the dial over to being an asset, maybe that's the point where you're starting to enter into quality recovery.
Wow. Hold on a second. So when yourself becomes less of a liability and more of an asset, that's when you're transitioning into real sobriety. Did I get that right?
Quality sobriety. So meaning, 10 years ago when people heard my name, it was a liability. It was,
sure. What does he want? What does he
wrong,
need?
That's wrong.
Right.
How's he messed up now? What's the consequences now? What help does he need to get out of now?
Yes, right.
That's
how drunk is he?
Yeah,
right.
That's what I say a liability. What hospital is he in now?
Right.
What detox is he in now? What is he blown up now? Right? That's a liability. But and when that dial changes to an asset, meaning, hey, what's he working on now? What was he succeeding on now? Who is he helped now? What's he trying to do now? Right? And there's people, believe it or not, there are people in my life that are like, how much can I give him now? Because I watch what he does with that money, right? And they're like, hey, how can I contribute? Because, I know my little world, and if I had $100, I don't have his connections. And I have people reach out to me and say, hey, I got $100. Who can we help?
Right.
And I usually have somebody on the tip of my fingertips, And I'm like, hey, let's do this for this person. Let's do that for this person, right? So I think that's being an asset for this world instead of sucking off and being a liability. So going back to our topic, you being the top 10, right? So I think, and going back, I had the luxury or the pain point, whichever way you want to look at it.
The gift of desperation.
Yeah, when I stood at that dry erase board 10 years ago when I was in my 4 months sober living, and my counselors told me to get up there and draw a circle. I drew the circle. I was in front of 15 or so people, right, in my IOP, and put the name of everybody inside that circle that's on your team. And I've told this story before, but for those that haven't heard it, I started crying because I had nobody in this world of the 7 billion, 8 billion people. I had nobody to put in that circle. And then finally I'm like, I feel like an idiot. I better put my own name, right? I think that's the right thing to do. So I wrote my name.
Which makes so much sense. I mean, that was
wise
beyond words.
I think I had hope, right? I think I still had belief that I surrendered, and I think my surrender was my magic key. And then my counselor's like, "Hey, you put my name in there because I'm on your team."
Right.
And I'm like, "Okay, I put Matt." Right. And then, I didn't even put God. God wasn't on my team. But hell no. And so today.
So you had two guys. One was yourself, and the other guy you were paying.
Correct.
No.
He was being paid to be on my team.
Yes.
Right. That's awesome. So I'm sitting there saying, right. I'm just like. And
that's where you started from.
Today, I have hundreds. I don't even have enough circles of people who are on my team that understand my story, know what I'm trying to do, recognize, cheer me on, right? And so I think, but I think that's a byproduct, right? I had excellence thrust upon me. I started with zero, and then what I realized through some help and through some direction, I only allowed people on my team in my circle that were going to provide value.
Right. Well, choice. You made a significant choice.
And so everybody I brought in that circle, I'm like, are you helping me on my path to sobriety, or are you going to hurt me?
Right.
Again, I lost everybody, so I didn't have to really kick anybody out, right? Now, there's people like you and others that had names in that circle, right? So then the question is, are they the right names, right? Just because they're in and there's a lot of family members or work people that are in that circle today, or neighbors or whatever, are they the right people? I was working with a guy 2 weeks ago, and he's making the decision to get out of his relationship because he was not, and I had to make that very challenging decision myself. It doesn't matter what he's doing. He is going to fail in that world.
Right.
He has to unplug at least for a period of time, because he's got to get himself better.
Yes.
Right. So he can perform in that environment if he can at all.
Right.
But that's hard. It's hard to invite people out. It's hard to invite, but that's why it's hard to fix a problem with the same brain that created it, right? So when I was early in sobriety, my sponsor, he still is, he's my lighthouse, right? He provides direction on who's good, who's not, who makes sense, who doesn't, right? And then to take this even more, we've done the Ferris wheel to underline this point even more of who's the key to having, the right people in your life. That big gold Ferris wheel picture, right? It's up on our website. We have the episode, right? And this big, beautiful blue background and gold Ferris wheel, gold cars. And we talk about living life on the Ferris wheel. Sometimes you're at the top, sometimes you're at the bottom. And it really makes sense, the Ferris wheel thing, to me. But one of the things I like about that is the cars on that Ferris wheel are real sexy. They're gold, they're decorated, they're like 8. You can see 8 people.
Right.
And that's kind of, in my mind, it's like, hey, it's not just important where you are on the Ferris wheel, if you're at the top, the middle, the bottom, right, staring at the trash. What's also important about that picture is who's in the car with you, right? And I think that can sit 8 people. That's kind of a good core team, right? I think it's good for people to say, who's my core 8? Right? Like I said to you just a little while ago, you're part of my top 10, right? You're in my first wheel car, and I'm very selective, Now, I love you, but if you went out and drank again and you went out and did all that shit, guess what?
Right.
I would have to remove you from my car, So that's where I just kind of listen and somebody was recording us.
Just for a nanosecond.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's very important, and I tell my kids, I watch who my kids hang with, and I say, you are who you hang with.
Jim Rohn, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Look at you doing your research.
I know.
Look at
I
you.
love that
Look
quote.
at you with your notes.
I love that quote.
No, but you know what? If you look at the 5 people I hang with, they're absolute champions in their industry, in their work, in their spiritual life, in their sober life, and it's funny because, I was talking with Jen about this, and we have, 4 kids, and then there's their 2 partners. I got, a boyfriend and a husband of one of my daughters, right? But I look at, if you want to have an A plus game, you got to hang with A plus people, right? And I talked to my son, and I'm like, hey man, you got to watch, because he hangs with some dudes that super on their best day, they're marginal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're never going to. It's like golf. If you're trying to get better in golf, you can't play golf with guys that shoot 120. You're going to learn 0. You're going to elevate your game 0. In fact, you're going to play towards them, not upwards. And that's just how everything is in life. But I think in sobriety, and I know you work with a lot of guys and tell a lot of stories, and it is hard to remove people. But if you have issues with your body, right? You go in surgery and you get them cut out, right? You get the C word cut out, right? You deal with it. You don't just let it sit there and grow,
Fester, right?
Right?
I'll say this though. I could listen.
I just
to you.
talked way too much.
No, that's great. And I was listening, but I really wanted to interject, because I was listening, and it almost sounds like you're saying, surround yourself with people who can bring more value into your life. Here's what I'm going to say I know about Glenn. The people that are in your Ferris wheel cart, your 8 people, okay? I know for a fact that your objective is not what you can get from those individuals. I know for a fact it's what you can give those individuals. So there is a point in time where it morphs. These people are in your network to support A, your sobriety, B, whatever other initiatives you got going on. That you're right. I mean, that's the 5 people, the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I get that. But I want to tell you that you've the secret sauce with your success, I believe, is the fact that I'm in your cart, but you're not constantly pulling from me. You're pushing to me. You are helping me. And I know that the other 8 people in your cart are getting the same treatment. So, again, I just wanted to correct the tone. It's not simply about what you get. It's about your opportunity to give. That's what I see play out in your life.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the most important cores of success in life.
Right.
Is, and I look at, how I was 10 plus years ago versus how I am today. I mean, I've had some very monumental situations happen in the last 10 years that have, how much time do we have?
We're good.
So I'll just share a story that is so impactful. It's one of my key stories. I mean, it's a business story, but it can be related. I remember 7-8 years ago, I had my own company, and I was doing some like investor relations, right? And so I was representing some early stage deals, introducing to some investors, and somebody introduced me to a $1 billion investor in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I'm early in sobriety. I probably have 2 years in sobriety, right? So I'm feeling okay about my sobriety, right? I'm learning how to live differently, learning how to use different tools, and so I had like 5 deals I was working on, and I'm like, hey, I'll sit down with this guy,
Sure.
and I'll get him to invest in all 5 deals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I sit with him and somebody introduced me, and I sit down at coffee, and for 45 minutes we're talking about me.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of deals? What am I about? What's my story? What's going on? And all of a sudden the Glenn calculator, the balance beam came in, or the seesaw. I'm like, oh wait, we're talking way too much about Glenn for 45 minutes. Boy, that's probably not good. Let me talk about him, right? So I said to him, I'm like, hey, we've talked a lot about me. I said, let's touch base with you, what you have going on, what kind of value I can bring, to your world.
Ding, ding, ding.
And he looked at me and he laughed. In my face, he laughed. And I was really put off. And he looks at me, he goes, I'm sorry. He goes, I didn't mean to laugh. He goes, that's pretty offensive. He goes, Glenn, look, I don't need you. He goes, I got teams of guys like you. He goes, you can't do anything for me. I mean, I was floored. I was on my back heels, and finally I said to him, I was like, then why would you sit here for an hour out of your busy day to spend time with me?
You said that?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said, simple. He goes, here's what I know. He goes, I know by spending an hour with you today, I will be repaid 10x on my time investment. I just know it. He said, I may not be able to put my name on it and say Glenn Hafner, but my life is so blessed in so many areas. He said, I just know. He said, I will do anything I can for you. And he's like, and I was floored. Mm-hmm. And I just looked at him like flabbergasted. I'm like, I don't get it.
Right.
Like
sure, it didn't compute.
Yeah, like my whole business world, my whole life, I was taught, I'll give you 1, but I want 4 from you, and I win. Right? And he comes to the table and says, I'll give you 4, I want 0. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what? And yet, he had the balls to say, I win 10x.
Yeah.
And so I started living like that. I started living like that in my sober world, in my family world, in my business world. And at some point I keep score, I mean, if I'm putting, 80 hours into somebody, I don't have a problem putting 80 hours. If I put 80 hours into somebody and they do 0 of the work, then I'm wasting my time. Then I'm trying to blow up a tire that's never going to inflate, right? So then I stop. I have barriers. I have, got guardrails, and I'm like, or boundaries. And I'm like, no, you're not going to suck off me forever, But if people, I will do anything for anybody, and I don't really keep score, and I'm like this dude, this big $1 billion investor, and I'm like, I'm rewarded, and I have an amazing life today, and I don't really know where it all comes from, but it comes from doing the right stuff, and so.
Well, I think it comes from your desire, your motive to serve.
Well, we have a guy, and that we know, and he's changing a little bit, but I mean, he was very transactional. Mm-hmm. He would want to meet, he'd have coffee, so he could pitch his services. Mm-hmm. And the minute that there was a guy in a big corporation, right, and he says, "Hey, let's have coffee," and the guy goes, "Okay, hey, great, let's get to know each other, looking forward to building a relationship," and the guy said, "Hey, just to let you know," because he was pushing, "Oh, I want to tell you all about the stuff I do, and you work for a large company, I see you fit," and he came right out. He said, "Just to let you know, I'm not the guy for that within my company."
So
right?
you should be talking about baseball at this point.
So guess what?
What? He pitched him.
No, he canceled the coffee.
No.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude, that is,
Wow.
You have life wrong.
Yeah.
I'm like, you are so transactional. I'm like, that's not how this stuff works.
Yeah. So not what you learned by your billionaire investor.
I'm telling you, I have learned that one thing, and it's not like a light switch. You test it, you're like, okay, it was a process. It was a learning process. But I'm telling you, I just give today. For example, I helped these guys this week, right? They were trying to find some money, and we're on the phone. I said, "Hey, I'll make some introductions. I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do this." The guy goes, "Okay, hey, wait, before we go any further, how much
What's your cut?
Yeah, how much do you charge? What kind of agreement do we have to have?" And I'm like, I don't want anything.
Right.
I don't want anything. And the guy looked at me, he goes, "I don't get it." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Look, man, you guys are in the same pool. People help me out every single day, and ask for nothing." I said, "I'll help you out." I made 4 introductions that are going somewhere.
Nice.
And he goes, "Glenn, I don't get it. You really are providing value." I'm like, "Look, we ever catch up with each other in the airport sometime? Buy me a steak." I said, "I don't want anything."
Right. But here, that's the beauty. It is the billionaire.
And I probably could have gotten $50,000 out of the guy.
Yes. It is the billionaire beggar story playing back out again. You're re-giving that gift, right? So,
and maybe I'm foolish for doing that, but I don't think I am.
No.
In fact,
it'll come back tenfold.
Oh my God.
It'll come back tenfold.
Oh my God. I had yesterday, and here's how it comes back is, I'm in the business investments and stuff, right? And I pitched this girl, and she says, "It's not a fit for our group." She goes, and I'm like, "Hey, you know what? That's cool." I said, "Hey, just thanks for taking the time, 30 minutes." I said, "Thanks for listening to my pitch and what we have going on, And I said, just really, and somebody introduced me to her, and she goes, "Wait, time out." She goes, "It's not a fit for our group." She goes, "But I know somebody this is a perfect fit for." Yeah. And the guy, she says, "I will personally," and she's on his team. She's a key part of his team, his investment team. And she says, "I will personally sit down and present it." She goes, "Every box, you check every box for him." And it's an absolute $1 billion dude.
But you didn't cancel that meeting.
No.
Okay.
But it's a $1 billion dude.
Yes.
And it's like, she didn't charge me.
Yeah.
She didn't say, "Hey, if I do this, if I do this," it's, that's just how the winners work. I really believe that. So that's how the winners work.
So let me.
The losers are transactional.
Thank you. Let me fix Jim Rowan. You are the average of the 5 people you serve with. You are the average of the 5 people you serve with.
I'm telling you, man, it is. And part of our topic was who and what.
Yes.
I think we talked about the who, but the what.
Yes.
It's like a guy I'm working with. Porn, getting crushed by a porn addiction, right? And he's like, "Oh, I just can't walk." I said, "Well, let's walk through your day. What do you do?" Right? He's like, "Well, all I think about all day is porn and women and lust and and I'm like, "Well, what do you do all day?" He goes, "Well, I work all day." I'm like, "Well, tell me about your work environment." "Well, I got 3 screens and he literally told me, he goes, "I have porn up on one of the screens and I watch it all day long." And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
I'm like, and you wonder, and you're curious about why you think and have lustful thoughts all day long.
Right.
I'm like, dude, like sometimes you can't read the label in your own jar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, dude.
And this is an obvious event.
And he's like, he goes, yeah. He said, "But I have, I use that." I'm like, you need one of those programs, man, that block out all the porn, right? I said, that's your first step.
Right, antabuse.
Right? I mean, Totally. So I think who and what.
Yeah.
And I think if everybody who's listening to us does a self-reflection, does an inventory, right? Grade the people
Yes.
that are in your world,
world,
right?
yep.
And say, should they be, right? Should I set boundaries,
Yep.
Or should I kick them out?
Right.
And I'm telling you, it's tough to kick people out. It seems rather selfish, but the people that are sucking off you. The people that are stress points and the people that are winners that are trying to bring you up and cheering for you. It's not hard. You know it in your heart. You know it in your soul.
Yep.
But it takes hard action to do it.
Right.
But, man, I'm telling you what, elevate up,
Elevate up. Don't deflate. Love you, brother.
I'm not sure if we accomplished anything.
I think we did. I'll have to go back and listen.
I don't know.
All right.
Love you, brother. I'm glad you're my top 10.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago. Beautiful city.